I'm very happy to see many familiar names as well as new ones. I counted that we have registered participants from 44 countries, including places like Trinidad and Tobago or Sri Lanka or Japan. So seems like this is a very hot topic to discuss. So let's get to it. I prepared just a few introductory slides, mainly for some housekeeping rules, but today's session will be very interactive and focused on discussions because the topic itself is still in brewing and it will be mainly about exchanging views, exchanging experience, and maybe some expectations. So reach revision. Why are we here today? Before we start, let's lay down some ground rules and especially welcome our today's speakers and panelists. I'm very excited and very happy to have Marko Susnik here today. Hi, Marko.
Morning. Pleasure to be here. Looking forward for the discussions. Hi.
Thank you for coming. Next in line, Bartl. Hi, Aleš, can you hear us?
Yes, good morning.
Thank you for coming and connecting from Chem UK, from a trade show, my friend and colleague Adam. Adam, can you hear us?
Can hear you. Nice to be here. Hello.
Great. So without any further introductions, just to let you know that you will get the recording. You will not get the Q&As sheet today because I guess there will be lots of questions. So it will be just what we discuss here today, but you will get the recording. So this is my favorite quote that illustrates that. With our webinars, you always know what you're going to get in terms of format. But in terms of content and knowledge, I think this is a great unknown for today, as the REACH revision is, because the topic is still in brewing. But you will definitely get the slides as well with some basic information that I have here. Feel free to watch our previous webinars on different topics, and some of them already are part of the REACH revision or chemical strategy for sustainability, and some have already been implemented to some extent. And of course, don't hesitate to contact our team if you need any further information or if you have any questions. So, where we stand. The REACH revision originated, or the first talks about serious revision and review of REACH started in 2020, where it was quite obvious that at that time it seemed like a top priority, very big one, coming from the chemical strategy for sustainability under the EU Green Deal. Back then, it was announced that REACH revision is needed in the most targeted way possible. But then, life happens, and in 2022 and between 2022 and 2024, there were several things happening in the world postponing this, and REACH revision wasn't a priority at that time. But that seems to be changing now, and I would call this time as let's get back to work. After all, REACH will be 20 next year, and it seems to be political as well as social priority to review REACH and introduce some changes to it. So in the Commission work program for 2025, targeted REACH revision is planned for until the end of this year. And it was rephrased lately as a simplification of REACH. So the primary aim, at least claimed aim, is to simplify REACH and provide clarity on PFAS. You can find the source of this aim and quote. So where we stand currently is that in April there was a Caracal meeting, high-level meeting at the EU level, presenting some proposed changes to REACH. And now, until the end of the year, these changes should be drafted, should be tabled into a proposal, which should be published or is aiming to be published towards the end of the year. So that's why we are here, to take a look at some proposed provisions, proposed changes before they are actually tabled and drafted into the legal text. And then, of course, we will be discussing and getting back to that once this is published. It will definitely be a central topic of a conference that we are preparing for April next year. So you are more than welcome to follow that. So I've done enough talking to introduce this. Now it's time to discuss. And I would like to start with a few questions. First one to the audience, just to see your expectations and where we stand. I would like to know if you have been familiarized with the latest proposals, how much you know already about what is coming or potentially coming, and then we can discuss what you think about that and your expectations and views. So I would like to let you know that you can ask questions anytime through the Q&A panel. We will get to that in some 15-20 minutes when we start discussing open questions. If you would like to comment on anything or get your voice be heard, raise your hand, turn on your microphone, and you can speak out loud. We always prioritize questions or comments that are raised in person over the microphone. You can also turn on your camera if you like. So now turning to Marko, Aleš, and Adam, because I know that you were involved at different times, to different extent and different depth in preparing this, discussing this, monitoring this closely. What do you think is heading in the right direction from the proposed provisions that you saw lately in the REACH revision proposal? Marko, can you name at least one proposed provision that you think is heading in the right direction?
Thanks. And briefly, as you asked us to introduce yourself, my name is Marko Susnik. I'm working for SM United, which is the European social partner for small and medium-sized enterprises. And there I'm in different expert groups like the Caracal and so on, where we are very closely tracking what's happening with the REACH revision. So that's me. And now coming back to your question, I mean, the problem with the current proposal or the current content that we had on the table just recently at the beginning of April in a large meeting with the member states and the European Commission is that there is nothing concrete yet. So we basically have all those proposals that have been tabled back in 2022, but meanwhile the political content has changed also a lot. So this is also something that we will have to keep in mind during that discussion, that everything is in a massive flow. So we are actually not really, I would say that even the Commission services are not really have decided what will happen, at least to the extent I can see. Now coming back to your question, I think that there are elements which absolutely make sense still from the previous mandate of the Commission, and this is certainly enforcement. This is something which is probably also the most elaborated part, where the Commission had the most clear views in April in the meeting of the Caracal. And that always makes sense. We are very much, we are very weak in regarding the enforcement aspects, while we have a very complex legislation which does not reflect the enforcement that we have. So here, getting a more transparent system, how much resources member states are dedicating, for example, the possibility, like we already have now in some legislation, that the European Commission can get involved into enforcement, like, for example, using the anti-corruption agency OLAF to do that, or going into the direction that ECHA gets some enforcement competences, like the revocation of registration numbers. This is something that makes absolute sense. Sure, we will have to discuss the details, but this is something where it's heading into the right direction. Then I would say also simplifications of the safety data sheet, for example, that's something which is very valuable. Else, well, you have then a second question, where it's the less good stuff. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marko. I'm sure we will get to some more, but let's see Aleš or Adam's views. Aleš, is there something that you find beneficial and heading in the right direction beyond what Marko just mentioned?
Thank you. Yes, so just to briefly introduce myself, my name is Aleš Bartl. I'm a partner in a law firm, regulatory law firm, Keller and Heckman, based in Brussels. So we've been helping clients to comply with REACH and to prepare for the revision. I see a bit more positive elements in there. Of course, the revocation of registration number goes in the right direction because it will actually help. Right now we have many registrants in joint registrations that are not participating, that do not want to pay, that are just simply not there, and the lead registrants often do not have sufficient power towards them to enforce, that they share the costs. So I think this will really help because there will be a possibility really to go to ECHA and basically request that ECHA revokes the registration number of registrant that is not paying, for example. I see going in the right direction, or as a necessary step, basically, the new data requirement for endocrine disruptors. Because right now we have a new CLP category of endocrine disruptors, and companies are often struggling with gathering data for classifying or not, and many companies are simply doing nothing. So I think the new REACH requirement for some endocrine disruptor data will provide more legal certainty for companies, because there will be some data that everybody will have to generate. And it will also ensure some level playing field, because it will be more difficult for those that are just ignoring this matter to hide, because simply the data will have to be generated. Then, yes?
May I just ask, shouldn't it have been done the other way around? Because now there's the obligation to classify endocrine disruptors. So companies do that. And then there will be the REACH requirement to generate data specifically for assessment of them. So there will be another round of reclassification based on the new data.
This is correct, but I think really the enforcement of the new of the endocrine disruptor category by enforcement authorities will be rather low at the first years, I think. Anyway, right. because the authorities will also not have any data to rebut classification. So I think everybody will be waiting actually for this new data requirement.
Good point.
Then I see some, for example, REACH authorization has not been working well. It's overburdensome. We have example of chromium trioxide that completely, collapsed the authorization system. So I think authorization will really be just used for niche chemicals with with few uses. And there will also be some essential use element in the authorization process, which is also positive. I don't think that essential use concept will bring much for restriction because it's in there already, kind of. But for authorization, definitely. And last, I would like to mention that there are some probably attempts to prioritize non-animal test methods over animal test methods in various places in REACH. So I think this is positive because CLP already provides some this alternative test methods, but it's REACH that is a testing regulation. So it needs to be in REACH, and I hope it will. I hope that there will be also some change of approach by ECHA, for example, to read across. Because right now, read across by registrants is hardly ever accepted. So I guess this will have to change hand in hand with enhancing the animal testing, non-animal testing methods. And there will also be potentially some clarifications, as to whether registrants can still invoke data adaptation when there is a decision already in force, substance evaluation or dossier evaluation. So I think there will hopefully be some shift towards giving registrants more possibilities to use read across and non-animal test methods.
Thank you. So you are raising your hopes that finally non-animal testing will get more acceptance, even though it has been there as the priority from the very beginning of REACH, and still the acceptance is rather low.
My hope is there, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Well, with that, I have to turn to Adam, our toxicologist and ecotoxicologist, who is closely involved in all the testing and alternative methods as well.
Yes, thank you for the beginning of talking about the ED and so on. So I think it's good that the REACH is finally catching up with the CLP regulation, where as it was said, the CLP regulation bring the ED 2 years ago, and it should have been originally other way around. First should be the testing under REACH and then the evaluation under CLP. I think that would be kind of logic, and I think it was intended to just get delayed somehow because there is a lot of changes in one go, and then maybe to do the changes gradually, it might be more fluent. And also here in timeline, we are looking in 1 year. At the end of this year, it should be finished. So it's a really huge amount of work which still needs to be somehow finalized and so on. Regarding the ED, I think it's interesting to have the first view on what studies will be required. And somehow here, as I read from the Caracal, that the non-animal testing is enhanced, and then I see the proposal for the tests for ED, and I don't see SETA, which is alternative embryo study in amphibians, which is already used for years in plant protection, but it's not there. So there's just the standard AMA animal test. So it's kind of, for me, contradictory, and there was a lot of discussion on this. I think a lot of member states said that we are here talking about NAMs a lot, but in the proposal there was not really too much NAMs. So, but I think I can talk about it a bit later on.
Thank you, and that's what I wanted to mention. That the REACH revision will be big, definitely. No matter how simplified all the provisions are, it will have a huge impact, and there are lots of areas that will be impacted. And we definitely need to get into more detailed and closer discussions once it is more tangible. So we will not have time to do that today. We have still some 40 minutes to discuss, and then definitely we can follow up with some more detailed webinars on individual topics where we see the most challenging items. Is there anything that you would like to mention, Adam, that you find the most challenging from the provisions that are proposed or considered?
Most challenging, yeah, I think the timeline is challenging to be finished in time. Like it also this ED requirements. We have first requirements. We know that there is a lot of discussion around. A lot of people are saying that we should test differently, different methods, nums, and so on. But there is not really too much time to discuss. So there's kind of a limited amount of paragraphs, limited amount of meetings. So I don't know how much it can change when there is actually not so much time to really change the things. So
Okay.
the self-imposed timeline, I think it's a big challenge.
So that's a challenge for the policymakers and for the regulators. And do I understand correctly that you fear that what will be implemented will not be, very well
Very well discussed from all stakeholders. Yeah, I think that's possible. It's possible. It's also, the discussion is kind of different ways. Like scientists are saying something, industry is saying something, people are saying something, regulators. So it's. I think it would take more than 1 year to find some really common ground to have something really well done and really working. But I don't know, maybe all the forces will be put into this, and then it will be completely great. There's, for instance, for the testing, there is, when there will be testing done on animals, or if the testing will be very challenging, then always it will need to have the discussion with ECHA, and then maybe that could be also challenging because with all the ED testing, there will be a lot of requests. It's a very animal-based testing, so I think that it will be also kind of challenge for the manpower within the authorities.
Okay, thank you for raising this, but let's not forget that this process started already back in 2020, and there were many meetings on different aspects. I remember, for example, a registration of polymers had a separate working group working together for almost 2 years to lay down some rules and discuss with different stakeholders as well. So I believe there was some space, but I agree that of course it can be still challenging to finalize everything in a sensible way. Marko, Aleš, would you like to reflect on that or raise some other aspects or proposed provisions that you find challenging, especially for the industry? What you think will be really a huge impact and a huge challenge for the industry?
So yeah, maybe I will. You mentioned polymer registrations. So obviously, it looks like first there will be just a notification obligation, and then the ECHA and the European Commission will, check the notifications and will further, develop potential registration obligation later. Depending on the notifications, they will define the grouping criteria. They will define which polymers exactly will be subject to registration. So this is the registration is definitely for later. And I think that the notification, provided that it really just requires basic FISCAN data, is not going to be very burdensome for industry. So I think that in the end, polymer registration is not really going to happen. I've been saying it for years already because I have the feeling that there is a strong pushback at the Commission level as well, because it would basically just be very burdensome. And the benefit would be rather low. Take PFAS. PFAS or fluoropolymers. Take fluoropolymers that are considered as PFAS. The ECHA itself admits that the use phase of fluoropolymers does not raise any issues. It's the manufacturing stage. It's the monomer basically stage. And for monomers, we have REACH registration obligation. We don't. Why do we need, polymer registration when actually polymers are usually considered as safe, and their risk depends basically on monomers use. So I think this. I think that this should be there should be continued effort to take polymer registration off the table. Of course, mixture assessment factor and Marko.
No, it was me, but Marko, do you wanted to add something?
I think let's have Aleš's package, and then I come with my package, I suggest.
Okay. I just wanted to ask Aleš for clarification if I understand it correctly, that from what you are seeing, you believe that there will be some requirements to notify polymers, basically to gain more information about the market and what kind of polymers we have and what kind of PhysChem properties they have. But it will not probably go beyond that. Maybe only for a very, very small or limited.
Yes. And maybe there will be a possibility for to submit some polymers of potential concerns to, for example, substance evaluation.
Okay.
That ECHA will be allowed for very specific polymers under very specific conditions. Request further data on, for example, substance evaluation provisions. But not for all of them. That would really be useless.
Okay. Sorry, I interrupted you with going on the mixture assessment, or
yeah. Of course, mixture assessment factor, and I'm sure Marko will also have his vote on this. Having a default multiplier for risk for any substance would lead to not only to the need to redo basically chemical safety report and chemical safety assessment for all substances, but will inevitably lead to many uses being actually assessed as not safe anymore, or to adopting overprotective measures. And I was quite surprised to see indeed in this Caracal presentation of April that mixture assessment is still there. I think it mentions that it will only be for substances above 1,000 tons. But still, I think there are other ways how to address risk of mixtures. I mean, specific mixtures rather than default value for all substances under REACH. Another potentially challenging element is the role of the candidate list, SVHC list. Right now, it's kind of considered as a pre-step for REACH authorization, but it's not going to be any longer. I think SVHC list will be a standalone shame and blame list for substances that are under somehow political scrutiny, without the ambition for these substances to be authorized at one point. It's really just to trigger the notification obligations towards consumers, towards ECHA in articles, to attract attention of media, of consumer watchdogs. And there will be much more substances gradually in the SVHC list, including potential endocrine disruptors, PBTs, PMTs, etc. Because right now there are not many new SVHCs added at the moment, but I think it's quite before storm. And then lastly, there is this proposal to extend the generic restrictions from CMRs to also the new categories, endocrine disruptors, PBTs, PMTs, which probably is inevitable, and I think it's correct because First, it would only be in consumer mixtures and substances, which is kind of okay, agreeable. It would only be for endocrine disruptors, PBTs, PMTs that are in the appendix to REACH. That means not only that they have harmonized classification in these categories, but they also got it into the list, into the appendix, although this is kind of automatic. But I think it would be really challenging if these categories would also be generically restricted in articles. And there were these talks, and I hope this is off the table, because in articles, very often these substances are really, there is no exposure. It's completely safe use. So I think extension to new categories, new CLP categories for consumer use in mixtures and substances, fine, but let's not extend it to articles. And okay, professional use, I think this is also fine, because there's also proposal to extend it to to professional users. I think this is fine as well. Okay, so this is all from my side.
Thank you. You touched very sensitive points concerning the debate on whether chemicals should be regulated based on hazards or risks. But I will not get in depth into that. Marko, please.
Since we stopped with GRA, generic risk management approach with Aleš, then I would continue there again. I think extending the hazard-based approach to professional uses and treating them like consumer uses, that's one of the largest risks for the professional sector. And it's actually also strongly irrational, considering that most professional users go through a professional education. And I think that during the discussions, and we have also pushed very strongly for that, the European Commission has understood that even the classical example of a hairdresser who is always brought up as this example of the, let's say, clumsy user of chemicals, it's not true. If you look at many member states, professional education of a hairdresser includes working with chemicals, includes worker protection. So I think this discussion is a very critical one, because it's a very fundamental one. It's exactly this shift to hazard-based. And this is something that certainly we as an association cannot accept, because 2/3 of the vocational education, professional education, is happening in SMEs, and we are very proud of that. And it's actually something that the chemical legislation shouldn't regulate. It's like saying to a cook, well, I will help you that you don't cut yourself with a knife. I take away your knife, and then you are safe. And then the cook will tell you, look, I don't like you because you just costed me my job. I have to close my restaurant. And you go to a professional user because the professional user is just better than you, has more knowledge than you. If I have a very complicated problem, I'm not doing that on my own. I go to the professional because I know the professional has a better education, has better access to resources. That includes chemicals. So an exterminator who should destroy the rats in my cellar, is it better to now do it on my own, or who should do that? It's gonna be the Ghostbusters. No, it's gonna be the exterminator who is being educated. So that's why the graph for professional users doesn't make sense. And we will keep working on that it doesn't happen. And also the essential use concept. Everything what has to do with an essential use concept is a tricky thing. I mean, sure, we're already using the essential use concept to a certain extent in certain discussions when it's about socioeconomic impacts. But having the essential use concept as proposed in the communication of the Commission, that would be a very challenging task. And when we look at the authorization that is overburdened today, or if you look at the biocidal product legislation, which is even more overburdened today, the essential use concept would be, well, a different universe of complexity. but it depends on the implementation. And here we also observe that the Commission is going into a much more pragmatic approach that essentially use concept eventually won't be this first filter where you filter everything out and then you only look in relation to risks, hazard, whatever. So this is also probably a potential, possibly a positive development. But it's a risk for industry, certainly. If chemical legislation starts to decide what's essential for you, or for me, I mean, well, interesting. It's nice for me as a chemist that we're getting such value, but I think that's going to be a tricky thing. With the polymers, I think I see it a bit differently. I think this is also, if there is just the simple notification, it's going to be a high burden. The burden is not necessarily with the registration of the polymers only in relation to the physical properties. Which was first intended. So basically, first it was intended to have this registration for specific polymers, and that's actually quite far developed. And it's going to be, in the end, only a political decision if it comes or not. So far, it's not decided, to my understanding. Then on top, during the discussion, there was the idea, but let's make an inventory of everything. So here we will have the problem, the substance identity of the polymers. And that's expensive. That's the expensive part. So we shouldn't underestimate that workload on the one hand, and we shouldn't underestimate the costs in relation to substance identity. That's going to be much more work than the pre-registration as we had in 2008. So we have to be really careful here. The math, yes, the math is not really scientific. It's a kind of a precautionary, very strongly precautionary approach. Not sure if this will help anyone. Then we have all kind of new notifications that are kind of being discussed. A downstream user notification for all substances on the candidate list. Not sure what that would help. Downstream users should notify alternatives. I don't, at least in our network, I wouldn't know who would have this information. Then we have the discussion about the re-registration every 10 years, which should be a very simple administrative task. So clicking some buttons. I'm not sure if this is useful for anyone. You just go and click buttons. What's the added value of that? Extension of the registration is a tricky thing. So for the low tonnages, 1 to 10 tons, more data, more a chemical safety report, then discussions about the redefinition of the intermediates status. So these are all things which could be very, very challenging for industry. But we have to be careful. This is still from the old mandate of the Commission. I think that with the new mandate, a lot has changed. And I think that many aspects that we discussed now, like the ED information requirements, I wouldn't see that even in the context of this REACH revision. This is more technical adaptations. So this is something that's happening even in parallel. We shouldn't oversee that. And with the authorization, for example, what Aleš said very nicely, it's completely, the system imploded. But it didn't implode because the legal text is so bad. But the selection of the substances was just not the optimal one. And this is actually happening now that the chromats are being pushed to restriction. So actually, we wouldn't need to change the authorization. We just need to change the approach. What do we put into the authorization? So in that regard, we wouldn't even need to reach review in my view.
I
this
remember.
Is kind of a short walk through challenges.
I would add this to this that indeed many of these elements come from the old Commission, but many of them were reiterated in the April Caracal meeting, and the slides are available, publicly available, and they actually raised a lot of disappointment and a lot of criticism from also CEFIC and stakeholders that actually everybody asked, so where is the simplification? These are the same things that we have been seeing for 5 years. So where is your commitment to simplify and to get EU industry more competitive? And then the Commission came with a statement actually correcting themselves, saying actually these Caracal slides were prepared by our, desk officers, and they were not consulted with the political leadership of the commission. Basically, the political leadership shied away from these slides in a way, saying nothing has been agreed yet. Wait, telling to the industry. So that was very disappointing, mixed message, showing that the Commission may not be ready for simplification, and because simply the decision making there is still a bit messy. But yeah, so I would say we many of these elements are still really not sealed, and we can still have some surprises when the REACH revision is out. It may actually be quite different from probably in a positive way.
Well, thank you. I forgot to highlight during my introductory presentation that there's a link in the slide deck to the Caracal meeting documents, so everybody can take a look at that for themselves. And I think it's time to bring up the questions from the audience. So if there's anyone who would like to make sure that your question is answered, please raise your hand. We will prioritize questions that are asked live. And one question that I have, framing all this, can we expect, or what can we expect in terms of further public consultations and including stakeholders in the final shaping of the REACH reviewed text?
I think that depends.
Yes,
I think
please.
it depends. It depends on which elements you're looking at. I think when we talk about the ED information requirements, so this is happening in a subgroup of the Caracal. So there is the involvement of the stakeholders is a very good one, I would say. In relation to the REACH, the core text, what's really the REACH review, which will go then into the ordinary legislative procedure, so Parliament and Council. That's a big question mark. I think that many of those aspects, like Aleš has said, will be politically decided. And right now, the technical discussions are very much disconnected with the political background. So I see this, on one hand, as a challenge to get your messages through, but on the other hand, this is also the risk that many of these decisions will be political. And when you have political decisions at a certain point, then you get stuff like, for example, our skip database, which is then, well, I wouldn't call it a catastrophe, but very, very unpleasant.
I was wondering if it will come up in our discussion. I remember when we discussed that when it was shaping, and for me it is a big disappointment as well in terms of benefit and costs.
But I give you one example, a simplification. You have a competitiveness compass. We should have reduction of 25 to 35% of admin. Everything what's being presented in the Caracal is not reduction. Everything is adding on top. So then there's nothing really for SMEs. And you need to simplify chemical legislation for SMEs, else it won't work anymore. And this is what's missing totally in these proposals. And we hope that we will see more on that. And something really with some meat.
I think also it's kind of changing in the way of biocides, pesticides. So like it is a validity registration for 10 years. In biocide pesticides, you have also this 10 years, 7 years, 5 years, depending on the substance and circumstances. But what it makes is that all substances will be all the time being registered. So it's something like you never stop registering anything. So I think this will be also kind of difficult.
That's a good point. Can I ask, Adam, so coming from this experience with pesticides and biocides, does this, time-limited authorization or registration actually bring additional data and additional value in the renewals?
Yeah, so it pushed the companies to always comply with the newest data requirements and the newest scientific development, which is on one hand it's good, but it brings a lot of testing and you never stop working on it. So it will take a lot of monetary resources, a lot of people resources. And in the reach, I think there were ways that the substances which were kind of troublesome, that they were really already in the focus. They were the registration was running all the time. So I think it's not really necessary to really put into focus all the chemicals, because we have literature. We can see where there some issues could be. There will be this grouping, which might be really difficult to, maybe if you group too much the chemicals, then the substances within, sometimes they are not so similar as they can look from some QSAR point of view. So it's challenges, and it will make a lot of work, and maybe it's kind of over regulation in a way. With the ED testing, I don't know if it's a good time to it, but there is like only animal tests in higher tonnage bands. So it's two rat test, multi-generation test with fish and amphibians, and also some animal tests quite often. So for me, this is kind of, from regulatory perspective, kind of overkill, I would say.
Because what you shouldn't oversee is we are not talking about substances. We are talking about substance use combinations if you compare it to biocides or pesticides. So under biocides, you have a very limited use. It's already per definition, it's for biocidal. But if you go into REACH registration, then this is an open use. Unless there is an exemption. So that's also the problem with the essential use concept. We don't talk about the essential use of a specific substance, but no, talk about the specific use of a substance use combination. So this is a multiplying factor. And then you should think about it, if you can afford to pay the same as you pay for a pesticide, for example, sodium sulfate. I mean, you won't be even close to what you're willing to pay for sodium sulfate, what you're willing to pay for a biocidal product or a pesticide. So that simply economically won't work if you would really start collecting more and more information. But that's actually not the plan with the 10 years. The plan with the 10 years is really simply to have something where you click and say, yes, my dossier is still updated and I don't need to do anything else. So that's basically the idea behind it. If there is new data and you need to update, you have to do it anyway before. That's a more general obligation as well on the REACH. So that's a bit of the tricky part.
I can see Jochen raising hand, so I will give him the floor. Jochen, can you hear us? Can you turn on your mic? Yes, we can. Thank you for joining the discussion.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. Regarding this clicking one button with regard to the 10 years, I'm afraid this is not what is happening. I mean, when we are doing registration dossiers updates at the moment, and we're not changing anything but the annual tonnages, we get a lot of error messages from the business rules check. And this depends on how long you have not updated your dossier. It can be 100, 200, 300 error messages, and you will need 1 day or 2 days to, because all the rules are always getting more. And then you have to do all these changes and find where is the error, what do I have to change? So it's quite a lot of work. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a very important comment, because basically what we also oversee, that it's a bit like the discussion when we talk about the polymer inventory, when it's then about the practical implementation, this is exactly what the problems are, because you have constant Euclid changes. And factually, formally, it's not much work. But then technically to implement it after 10 years, absolutely. That's thanks for that. I think that's very important also for the practical discussion.
And still the question is, what would be the benefit? What would be the value of this exercise? I think that's a good point to really keep in mind and keep raising. If there is any opportunity to comment on any kind of proposals, I think that should resonate through the space. Any other questions from the audience? Please feel free to raise your hand. If not at this point, I think it's time to bring up the third question that I had prepared, framing all the discussion that we had so far. Anything particular that you would highlight that you think should be completely left out from the REACH revision thinking, or at least postponed to some later stage when it's thoroughly thought through? It sounded like that there are some provisions that you think shouldn't really go forward, at least not at this stage. But maybe if you can highlight the main ones. Who wants to start?
Quickly, for me, this is really polymer registration, burdensome, not necessary. Mixture assessment factor, burdensome, detached from risk. And there are better ways how to approach mixtures where you have addition of hazards.
Thank you. Anything on top of that, Marko, from your perspective?
For me, very similar, but I think also then the hazard-based approach as such, I think we have reached have reached the top, and it works very well how we have it for consumer uses. But there is no question, sure, there's going to be an extension on endocrine disruptors and those properties. That's a fair point. But all the extensions to professional uses, this differentiation between professional uses, industrial uses, it's becoming a bit absurd. And I think we should also become more realistic in relation to qualifications of professionals. AOC, I think we have to be very, very careful how we use that. That can really be a big stopper for everyone, for industry and for enforcement authorities. And the rest, I would absolutely agree with Aleš. So no need to repeat. Thanks.
Thank you, Marko. I very much liked the tone of your speech or thinking. How you mentioned the example of a cook or a hairdresser, because I think even it shows clearly how even such a technical regulation such as REACH is really now impacts the fundamental aspects like freedom, civil rights, education. And we are really now striking hard topics which go beyond only just safety and protection of health and environment. So I think we should be really careful with that. We have a few questions we have many questions in the chat and Q&A's window. We will not get to all of that. As I said, we need to organize some further discussions, further webinars, and I'm sure we will bring a lot of these questions and a lot of these topics to the conference next year, to the Prague Chemicals Management Cruise. So maybe just a few that struck my eyes. We spoke a lot about polymers. There are lots of questions about polymers, so we will definitely follow this and organize trainings or webinars as soon as something more tangible is there. What was already proposed 2 years ago, we already covered, so we can get back to that, or you can also get back to that in the previous recordings of our webinars. Several questions were concerning UK REACH and how REACH review will impact UK REACH. I think I can say from my experience that UK is now carefully considering their next steps and actions. And from the past experience, it was obvious that They want to take whatever is beneficial and sensible and fit for purpose, whatever they think is fit for purpose. They happily adopt, but with controversial provisions which do not show clear benefit, they do not adopt those. And I think the skip database is one clear example of that. So I expect that REACH revision will impact UK chemicals legislation in the same way. UK will try to adopt what is sensible and beneficial and pragmatic, but with the rest, they will be very careful, I guess. Any other opinion on that?
I agree. Last week I was at CTEC. I saw a very nice presentation from UK authority. They were actually looking into the endocrine disruptors, and they were proposing how to calculate PNEX for the endocrine disruptors. So basically going from the hazard based into the risk based. Like it was said that it's mostly for authorizations, but it's also the other message is that there are safe levels for endocrine disruptors. So that's something which we don't really see in continental Europe now.
Thank you. We have some 2 minutes left, so not much time. One last question resonating through the chat and Q&A's panel is concerning digital product passports. So just a quick word from all of you, what you if you think the digital product passports are heading in the right direction and something that is needed and beneficial, or maybe too complicated, too burdensome, if you have been familiar with this concept.
Well, for the time being, this digital product passport are really for product-specific regulations. For the time being, we have them for industrial batteries. So it's for a very specific product. But soon we will have it for many other consumer products. And it's part of blame and shaming for content of substances of concern. We have to take into account that substances of concern are defined differently in product-specific regulations, such as in eco-design regulation, than in REACH. There are many more hazardous classes that are covered by substances of concern concept in a non-REACH area. And all these substances will have to be mentioned in the digital product passport. So this will really lead to blaming and shaming. And otherwise, obviously, digital product passport will probably contain a lot of redundant information that consumers will just not understand.
It seems like you're sharing my view that in principle, I see it as a step in the right direction. I like the concept, but the details of the implementation are so ambiguous that it might turn out not really well. Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for joining. I think we could speak for a few more hours, and I'm really happy that we could all join together here today. Thanks a lot, Marko. Thanks a lot, Aleš. Thanks a lot, Adam. And I'm sure we will keep in touch. And I'm very much looking forward to discussing some more when there are more tangible details available.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure. Thanks to everyone for these questions.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
You too.